got more and more frustrated. And I said, what would happen if I cut this very short? And I kept editing and kept editing. I ended up with a 3-minute film instead of what I thought would be a 70-minute film. And I was laughing at myself. It's really silly. And I submitted it, and film festivals loved it. It went to a lot of film festivals. It won a couple awards. And my friend said to me, well, if you can take something and cut it down to the essence, just a few minutes, you're making art. You're not necessarily making a documentary, but you're making an art piece, and it's succeeding. And I was re-encouraged. Now, as this happened, let's go to the next slide. I started to look into, I was doing other things. I was a museum curator, and I taught, and I was looking into how did people make documentaries and how did they survive? And I started to find out it was very tough. This is a survey that was done both in the US and the UK. And what they found was that of people who said, I'm a documentary filmmaker, only 22% of them really could make their full living from just their films. That's okay, because when I grew up, all my photography teachers, at the time it was harder to make money as an art photographer, all of my photography teachers had a teaching job and made art. And I was used to that, but a lot of documentary people were very frustrated in that it's a very tough field from a sustainable economic angle, something you guys may want to think about. Let's go to the next slide. Now, a lot of the people I've met in the last few years do now make things like 60-second films. They want to make things, explore, they want to partner and see other people's work. So this on the screen is a project I was just in where we had 45 filmmakers in Scotland and Canada and the US and I think a few other countries participate. And it's a series of 9 films. Each one has 5 people on it, and each has made a 1-minute film. So it's 45 minutes that we did over just a week, but it really is 45 1-minute films. And you can access this at the docmadocs.com. And it's a great piece of art to do that thing, but very different than making a film like Woodstock. Now let's go to the next slide. Now, for me, I then saw the cameras, the equipment, the sound gear, everything get better. And finally, at a certain point, we could make cinematic documentaries. We could make things that look really good. So on the right are some stills from some of my films. I really usually work interview-based. I love to work with artists. And now you can make something digitally that looks as good as a good piece of film. And that looks better than the people who made documentaries in the 60s, to be honest. However, there's a problem. It's that there now are a zillion people doing this. It's very challenging. It's hard to compete. It's hard to get access and get support to do things, but it's now workable. So I think that a lot of the ideas we developed are there now, and you guys can make things. I advocate for my students. I always say when they come and say, I want to make a full-length documentary on this, I say, why don't you make 2 shorts about it first? You need to explore the ideas. You need to learn your best ways of working, and you'll go much faster if you make several shorts before you go to that. And sometimes they like that, and sometimes they don't. Now, when I was young, probably exactly your age, in California, you can go into a casino if you're 21. I lived in Southern California, and we could drive 4 hours to Las Vegas. So we did. We'd go to have fun. I didn't like to gamble, but they had slot machines, so I would take nickels, and I would put them in the slot machine and play that. And you would always lose a few dollars. It wasn't much to do. But one night, I played a slot machine, and it was video poker, and I noticed it was broken. It wasn't right. It was supposed to take my nickel and a tie, and it wasn't taking it. And my math classes came back to me. I said, well, wait a minute. I actually have even odds on this instead of a disadvantage. I said, if I keep playing, I'll eventually win something. But then I realized, well, it's nickels. It won't be very much. But I looked up on the screen, and there was a $10,000 jackpot. And I said, wait a minute, I'm going to try. And so I played nickel slots all night long, and I won about enough to buy a coffee. But I never won the $10,000. But I kept saying, oh, well, this is sort of like art, where you keep making more and more pieces, and you try to hit the jackpot. And then I realized what was really sad, I think, is that when people say, how do you pay for a short documentary? Sometimes people can get a grant, they can get support, they can get a company that wants to support what you're doing. Sometimes it's great. But for a lot of people, the world has responded to short documentaries to say, well, you'll get paid by the click. We'll put it on YouTube and the number of clicks will come back to you or to other sources. About 2007, I had a film that went to some film festivals, and a company called Snag Films said, oh, we'll put it up and we'll pay you 25 cents per view. Okay, good. I added up. I said, if 4 people watch it, I get $1. And we didn't make much from that. There aren't that many views. And then it only went down since then. So you guys are now facing a world where Amazon says, yes, without too much trouble, you can put a film on Amazon Prime, but we're really only going to pay you 15 cents or less if people watch it for an hour. And that's very hard. So with short documentaries, you make something 10 minutes long that's fantastic. You might get lucky and have 1 million people watch it. You probably won't. So documentaries have sometimes $1 million theatrical run, and sometimes they have somebody makes $20 for a film that they've worked 2 years on. So it's a very strange time for that. And it's sort of like that slot machine paying off just a few nickels at a time, a lot of work for maybe not too much per click. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what I am coming back to you guys with is I went this way because I love art. I think of each little film as making art the same way somebody makes painting. And I can't not do it. It's something that's very interesting to me and I do. Sometimes I get paid for it and reasonably well. I worked for New York Times for a while doing a lot of short documentaries and they pay pretty well. And I've done a lot of commercial projects and those pay well. But in the documentary itself, unless you get into a mode where you're going to get a grant to support it, it's not very often that it makes a lot of money. It's often done for your work as an artist or for your love of the field. But what I'm saying is you guys should be thinking now about what the future is. I think all the things you learn from making shorts, even 1-minute films, are now finding a way to be applied into films that are much more a medium length. So something like a 22-minute TV documentary. And on screen here is something I'm working on right now, a film about civil rights in Mississippi, and probably will end up 22 minutes and probably will be aimed at public broadcast. And it probably will bring back a little money, not a beach house money, but a little bit of money. And I think this is where, for a lot of you, you may build your skills towards. I would really encourage you guys to look at these medium length things and who is succeeding making them, where they're getting support, where they're getting an audience, whether that means broadcast TV, or if it can succeed at film festivals, or if there are new ways of marketing things. I really encourage you guys, especially, I know some of you on the call, I think have made documentaries now, to look at that length. We have such a glut of short documentaries. You need to do it to learn, you need to do it to explore, but I do think the future of documentaries for the next few years, especially now that no one is this year going to the theater, is probably in the mid-length, things like a 22-minute TV broadcast. So I wanted to talk to you guys about that. So that's where I think we are. I think we've come from a point where no one could make documentaries unless they were very, very fortunate and privileged, to where now almost anyone with access to a camera and a computer can. But at the same time, we have a very hard time getting somebody to watch a documentary. I'll show one of my students' documentaries and say, hey, you've got to see this. And people will get my email and say, yeah, I'll watch that later. I'll watch it later. We're very resistant. There's too much stuff. There's just so much that what you guys are going is a very competitive world and a very exciting world. And here's the metaphor. A long time ago, pianos were not in the house. They were only the richest of the rich. And then there was a boom in the middle class, and people then had the piano in houses. And it became part of the upper middle class that if you had daughters, had piano lessons for the daughters so they would be part of society. And once there were pianos in everybody's houses, the composers got so much better. Everyone could understand complex piano music now. It was everywhere. And I think we've done that with video, where we've gone from, there's two brothers making a